Welcome to NTD.
Good morning. Here are today's top stories. An attempt to serve a warrant to a convicted felon in North Carolina turns into a tragic day for law enforcement, with 4 fallen officers. More on the incident and a second shooter.
Protesters took over a building at Columbia University early this morning. How pro-Gaza protests are spreading across U.S. campuses and how universities are scrambling to respond.
The anti-Israel protests sparking reactions from both the Biden White House and former President Trump, what each is saying as the U.S. pushes for a new hostage deal in Gaza.
A missile attack in Odesa killed at least 4 people and injured nearly 30 today. This after a UN panel said a North Korean missile was used in a January strike against Ukraine. The latest in the Russia-Ukraine war.
As illegal immigrants continue to flow across the southern border, U.S. and Mexican leaders say they will work together to stem the tide. More on the agreement.
The largest U.S. wireless carriers are facing hefty fines. Find out what's behind the FCC's allegations and how wireless companies are reacting.
The Palace of Versailles is hosting the equestrian events during the Paris Olympics. More about an elite team of riders carrying on the tradition.
This is NTD Good Morning. Live from our global headquarters, here are Evelyn Lee and Kevin Hogan.
Welcome to NTD.
Good morning, everyone. Today is Tuesday, April 30th.
Yeah, and Evelyn, if you heard, those protesters are now breaking into the dorms at Columbia. That's according to the school's radio station.
Right. The school, Columbia, is also saying that those encampments are a threat to campus safety. So this is topping the news this morning. A big update in the ongoing protests at Columbia University. Anti-Israel protesters took over and barricaded a school building early this morning.
That happened hours after the university began suspending students to clear tent encampments as this year's commencement ceremonies approach. NTD's Jeremy Sandberg has the story.
Protesters at Columbia University broke into and barricaded historic Hamilton Hall on campus in the early hours Tuesday morning. A report from the Columbia Daily Spectator says protesters unfurled a banner reading Hind's Hall in reference to 5-year-old Hind Ruzab, who was killed in Gaza in January. This signals a major escalation in the protests at Columbia, a day after negotiations between demonstrators and university administration broke down. On Monday, the university began suspending students who set up camp on campus. University President Manoush Shafiq stated talks failed to persuade demonstrators to pack up their tents. University spokesperson Ben Chang said the encampment created an unwelcoming environment for Jewish students and faculty. He said the university is giving students the chance to abandon the protest site.
Students who do not will be placed on suspension, ineligible to complete the semester or graduate, and will be restricted from all academic, residential, and recreational spaces.
An anonymous student filed a lawsuit against Columbia on Monday for allegedly failing to guarantee the safety of Jewish students. A lawyer for the student said the lawsuit is the result of what he called complacency and appeasement by academic institutions calling for genocide.
The people united!
Nationwide, the protests show no signs of slowing down. Police arrested dozens of protesters at the University of Texas in Austin on Monday. The charges range from trespassing to disorderly conduct. The university issued a statement saying the encampment set up on campus broke school rules. It said many protesters arrested were not affiliated with the university. This after opposing sets of protesters clashed at UCLA over the weekend. Tensions between pro-Israel and pro-Gaza protesters had been growing before a group broke through a barrier set up to separate the two camps. It's unclear which group first breached the barricade. A pro-Israel demonstrator described his experience.
We were bum rushed by a huge crowd of protesters that came in and circled this whole area.
The pro-Israel camp staged a screening of graphic footage from Hamas's October 7th terrorist attack on Israel. These included clips of people, including babies, getting shot in their homes, and interviews with survivors. One student described to NTD how the protests have disrupted life on campus.
Even today, the steps are blocked off. You can't go up giant steps to get to your classes. You have to go around. There's so many helicopters. Sitting in class, it's so hard to pay attention.
Officials at Virginia Tech say 91 protesters arrested on Sunday night had been charged with trespassing. Video posted on social media showed demonstrators chanting "Shame on you" as some were taken into custody. House Speaker Mike Johnson said Monday lawmakers will hold college administrators accountable for not keeping their students safe.
This is not an expression of free speech. This is the threats and open intimidation of the lives of innocent Jewish students.
Johnson said House Republicans will focus on this message over the rest of the week. Jeremy Sandberg, NTD News.
And over to the Israel-Hamas war, mediators are stepping up efforts to reach a ceasefire deal.
A delegation from the Hamas terrorist group visited Cairo yesterday for talks. Let's take a look.
Hamas negotiators are expected to deliver a response to the phased truce proposal Israel presented over the weekend. The terrorist group will also discuss its own ceasefire proposal to mediators from Qatar and Egypt. In recent days, Israeli officials have indicated they would be open to a hostage deal in exchange for suspending a planned ground invasion of Rafah.
Hamas has before it a proposal that is extraordinarily generous on the part of Israel. And in this moment, the only thing standing between the people of Gaza and a ceasefire is Hamas.
The U.S. and allies are calling on Hamas to accept Israel's proposal. This comes as Secretary of State Antony Blinken begins his Middle East trip with a meeting in Saudi Arabia on Monday. He'll visit Jordan and Israel later on. Meanwhile, Israel is voicing concern over the International Criminal Court. It says the court could be preparing arrest warrants for Israeli officials for alleged violations of international law over the conduct of the war. House Speaker Mike Johnson criticized the International Criminal Court for considering such warrants and called on the Biden administration to take action. Israel's foreign minister said the country will not be deterred and will continue to fight. Meanwhile, the Biden administration on Monday released its own assessment of Israeli military units.
After a careful process, we found 5 Israeli units responsible for individual incidents of gross violations of human rights. All of these were incidents much before October 7th, and none took place in Gaza. 4 of these units have effectively remediated these violations, which is what we expect partners to do.
Reporting by Allison Lee, NTD News.
And joining me now for more on the latest is Israeli government spokesman Avi Hyman. Good morning, Avi. Thank you so much for joining us this morning. First, I would like to get your response to reports of a potential ICC arrest warrant or potential ICC arrest warrants against Israel's top leaders. What is your reaction to that?
Hi, good morning, Evelyn. Thanks for having me on. I can tell you that this we've seen the same reports that you've seen. It would be a travesty of justice, dare I say, for the ICC to take actions of that nature. We know that it would be purely political. Israel is not party to the ICC. They are essentially seeking some kind of political public relations win against Israel when we're fighting for our very existence. You know, we're surrounded by Iranian proxies trying to wipe us off the map. Iran says on a daily basis that they want to wipe us off the map. So any acts like this from the ICC would be obviously detrimental to us, but they would have no influence on the way that we are prosecuting this war, which is fully in line with international humanitarian law. And we will continue on to destroy Hamas. Ceasefire now, ceasefire now. I don't think people understand what that means. Ceasefire now means keep Hamas in power. And that's obviously something that we won't be doing. We will destroy Hamas both politically and militarily to ensure that they don't pose a threat to us anymore. What we're open to and what's on the table, and as we just heard Secretary Blinken describe as an extremely generous offer, the most generous offer that we've put on the table to bring home the 133 Israeli hostages being held against their will, men, women, children, and a baby. It's a crime against humanity, and those people need to be home with their families now. So we are going to do what we've done until now, which is apply maximum military pressure, while at the same time exploring all diplomatic channels open to us. Because at the end of the day, those people need to be home with their family as soon as humanly possible.
Got it. So the reason why I'm asking is because there were chatter about a potential, offer of sustained calm. So I also would like to get your reaction to the widespread protests currently across the U.S. I'm sure you've seen all about it, especially about the anti-Israel chants.
So these are not anti-Israel protests. Let's be clear. These are pro-Hamas protests. These are pro-genocide protests. When someone shouts out things like "from the river to the sea, Palestine will be free," free of what? Free of Jews. Now, we've heard statements like that made in the past, and those people meant them. They meant to wipe out the Jews, just like Hamas in their charter says that they want to perpetrate genocide against my people in Israel and around the world. So it's very worrying for me, but it should be very worrying for the American public and universities all around the world to see people marching in the university, praising the Islamic Republic of Iran that hangs gays and stones women, their own gays, and you just support for Iran, for the Houthis, and obviously for Hamas, the baby beheaders. So we must, this must be condemned on all fronts. Anti-Semitism is shooting through the roof because people don't understand what's going on here. Israel was attacked. Israel is defending itself. Israel, the one and only Jewish state on earth, will do our absolute utmost to defend our people, to go after the Hamas terrorists while limiting civilian casualties, and to bring peace back to Israel and back to the region.
Right. And just quickly, I also want to ask about the protests inside of Israel, because many are saying they have lost faith in the Israeli government and calling for re-elections. How does the government now want to deal with this and perhaps regain trust?
Israel is a vibrant democracy. You know that. I know that. There's an old joke that if you have two Jews, you have three opinions. Everyone's got something to say about everything, and that's fine. But the vast majority of Israel support the war aims to destroy Hamas, to bring home the hostages, and to ensure that Gaza doesn't pose a threat to us anymore. And obviously, there's differences of opinion on what the best possible way to bring the hostages home would be. Now, that's fine. The Prime Minister has met with the hostage families today and continues to meet with hostage families. And the War Cabinet is doing its absolute utmost, using the carrot and the stick, diplomatic pressure and military pressure, as we've done in the past, and as we saw worked to bring home hostages. So we'll keep up the pressure militarily and diplomatically. But the government has overwhelming support of the people to plow on with the mission and get the job done.
Understood. Thank you so much, Avi Hyman, for joining us this morning again.
Thank you.
And 4 law enforcement officers are dead, and another 4 were shot and wounded in Charlotte, North Carolina yesterday.
NTD's Daniel Monahan has more on the shooting, which happened while officers tried to serve a warrant to a convicted felon.
The flashing lights of police and emergency vehicles on a sunny residential street, an eerie calm after the terrible events that occurred there. Police Chief Johnny Jennings called it a tragic day for Charlotte and for law enforcement.
Today we lost some heroes that are out to just simply trying to keep our community safe.
Jennings described what unfolded when a U.S. Marshals Fugitive Task Force went to serve a warrant to a convicted felon for possession of a firearm.
When they approached that individual, they were met with gunfire. Officers returned gunfire and struck the victim, who was later pronounced deceased in the front yard of the residence.
Some of the officers who rushed to the Charlotte neighborhood to rescue the first wave of downed officers were wounded as a second shooter began firing on them. After a 3-hour standoff, the suburban Charlotte home was torn open. Armored vehicles smashed into it, ripping off windows and entire doorways that were left broken. Police took a woman and a 17-year-old male found in the home into custody. Chief Jennings said it is believed at least one of them had fired on the officers. One of the downed officers was Joshua Iyer, who leaves behind a wife and his 3-year-old son, Andrew.
We'll always be indebted to Officer Iyer for his bravery and his sacrifice for this profession.
Chief Jennings says just last month he was congratulating Iyer for being named Officer of the Month. Daniel Monahan, NTD News.
Former President Trump's criminal trial in New York City is back on today. A judge is likely to rule on alleged gag order violations this week. Prosecutors are expected to pick up questioning of Michael Cohen's former banker this morning. Judge Juan Merchan set a hearing Thursday on prosecutors' gag order claims, but could address them today. The court takes a full recess every Wednesday. Trump will campaign in Wisconsin and Michigan tomorrow. Prosecutors want Judge Merchan to fine Trump $1,000 for each of the 14 alleged violations they flagged. That was for Trump's comments in public and on social media. The Manhattan DA's office wants the judge to warn Trump he could end up in jail if he doesn't stop. Up next, anti-Israel demonstrators occupying buildings at Columbia University. This while the school begins suspending those who don't disperse. What is the appropriate response? A law professor weighs in after the break.
These are all farmers. Maybe
no,
not this
not
one.
A farm anymore.
But here's a farm, right?
No, there's also not a farm anymore.
All these people shut down because of the government policies?
Yeah.
The government wants to control the food. So we don't eat meat, but we eat insects.
As the price of staples goes through the roof, people will say, I can't afford a steak anymore. So, all right, I'll eat your stupid crickets.
When I drink it, the first thing was I feel the warmth in my tummy. It's kind of like gently radiating out, a kind of a very comforting warmth. And it was really good, actually. I felt much better. I did feel, actually, an effect. And I find that it is actually better when I take it regularly.
It's actually steamed and dried 9 times. And so it's really, the essence is really extracted.
Then a second time, I tried it really like on an empty stomach and just 2 teaspoons of it and over a few times. And wow, that was a big difference because suddenly I could feel, wow, I was very good energized. I didn't have to eat. I could work outside in the garden for a couple of hours and I still felt very well. And I was impressed by that. So I think it's a good product.
The shining gem of New England. This delightful seaside city of Newport is one of the most beautiful places in the state. Today, we bring you here as we meet with our friends and fellow musicians from the Hermitage Piano Trio. As a team, they have garnered multiple Grammy Award nominations with their breathtaking performances.
Oh, wow, I did not think this instrument can make that sound, right?
The pandemic made this reunion even more special.
3 of us, we like it because we feel music the same way, so...
Don't miss us on the next episode of Piano Talks.
Welcome back. As protests on college campuses continue to escalate, a major development at Columbia University.
A group of protesters early this morning took over and barricaded Columbia's Hamilton Hall.
The university announced yesterday they would start suspending students taking part in the demonstrations.
Tear gas was dispensed at multiple universities yesterday, and police arrested dozens of protesters at the University of Texas and Virginia Tech, including those who are not affiliated with the university.
At least 6 protesters were arrested at Tulane University in New Orleans. And at UCLA, demonstrations continue in the wake of violent clashes between protesters over the weekend.
And at the University of Florida, police began arresting protesters yesterday. A university spokesman responded saying, "This is not complicated. The University of Florida is not a daycare, and we do not treat protesters like children. They knew the rules. They broke the rules, and they'll face the consequences."
And the White House is taking a careful approach toward the campus protests.
That's as former President Trump yesterday offered a forward response to the ongoing turmoil. NTD's White House correspondent Iris Tao has the story.
As Columbia University is now warning students of getting suspended if they don't clear out of their protest encampments, the White House again condemned anti-Semitism, but also declined to weigh in on whether some of these students should face the consequences of getting expelled or suspended. Here's what the Press Secretary said at today's briefing.
Got to be super mindful. These are institutions. Some of them are private, some of them are public, and it is up to their leadership, university leadership and colleges, to make that decision. Not going to weigh in on that from here. All Americans have the right to peacefully protest. At the same time, we have to call out any hateful rhetoric.
Former President Trump, meanwhile, posted a forward response on Monday saying, quote, "Stop the protests now." And as protests continue to Royal College campuses, the U.S. is pushing for a new ceasefire deal in Gaza. Secretary of State Antony Blinken on Monday said Hamas has now before them a generous offer.
Hamas has before it a proposal that is extraordinarily generous on the part of Israel. And in this moment, the only thing standing between the people of Gaza and a ceasefire is Hamas.
On Sunday, President Biden called Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu to talk about the prospects of a ceasefire deal. But Trump, also weighing in on Monday, says it's hard for Hamas to make a deal because many of the hostages are now, quote, already gone.
The House of Representatives is expected to vote this week on the Antisemitism Awareness Act.
Our Washington correspondent Luis Martinez has the details.
The Rules Committee of the House of Representatives began the markup of the Antisemitism Awareness Act this Monday. The legislation was originally written back in October of 2023 in the wake of the October 7th terrorist attack by Hamas. The legislation has over 40 co-sponsors, among them over a dozen Democrats. The bill requires the Department of Education to use the International Holocaust Remembrance Alliance definition of anti-Semitism to enforce federal anti-discrimination laws. The renewed push to pass the bill comes after college campuses nationwide have been affected by pro-Palestinian protests. The Anti-Semitism Awareness Act would make calling for or justifying violence against Jews or denying the self-determination of the Jewish people punishable under federal anti-discrimination laws.
There is executive authority that be appropriate. If this is not contained quickly, and if these threats and intimidation are not stopped, there is an appropriate time for the National Guard. We have to bring order to these campuses. We cannot allow this to happen around the country.
House Republicans have also asked the Biden administration to use executive action to address anti-Semitism nationwide. On the other hand, House Minority Leader Hakeem Jeffries sent a letter to Speaker Johnson this Monday urging him to consider a different kind of legislation. The Democrat proposed Countering Anti-Semitism Act looks to create a new White House anti-Semitism task force and allocate $400 million for FEMA's nonprofit security grant program to enhance the physical security of Jewish schools and institutions. It is expected that the House of Representatives will vote on the Anti-Semitism Awareness Act this week. Reporting from Washington, D.C., Luis Eduardo Martinez, NTD News.
To discuss the anti-Israel protests happening at Columbia University and others around the country, we bring in William Jacobson, a Cornell Law School professor and the founder of EqualProtect.org. William, thank you for being here with us this morning. There is a difference in rhetoric and response surrounding these anti-Israel protests at schools across the country. For example, Florida Governor Ron DeSantis has called for demonstrators to be flat out expelled, while the University of Florida, as we mentioned, said the school's not a daycare and that these people should face the consequences. Columbia is starting to suspend these demonstrators. What's the appropriate response here?
Well, I think that if you're breaking into buildings and you're barricading them and you've been given alternative means of protesting and you choose not to take those, then I think you should bear the consequences of what you've done. These are adults. These are not 3-year-olds. They may be acting like 3-year-olds, but they're adults, and they should bear the legal and the scholastic repercussions of what they are knowingly doing.
Yes, and William, this is definitely widespread as the number of arrests across the country surrounding these protests is nearing 1,000 here. This decision to suspend students, is that enough, or is expulsion an option?
Well, I think that it depends on what they did. If they committed acts of violence, like some of these people are, if they committed ethnic hate crimes, which some of them clearly have, including at UCLA, then they should be expelled. No second chances. If, on the other hand, they're just protesting and maybe making a little bit too much noise, then no, that's probably too much. But the point is, the rules have to be enforced equally and evenly against everybody, and they're clearly not.
And William, some Jewish students have fled Columbia University, whereas others have walked up to the picket lines and said that they're here to stay. They're not going anywhere, so they're taking a stance on this here. What about the response now? Is Columbia delayed? I mean, could it be viewed that this is something that should have been done a long time ago, as the damage, so to speak, has been done, according to these Jewish students who are afraid for their safety?
Well, I think the damage has been done over more than a decade at a place like Columbia and some of the other schools. This has been a atmosphere of tolerance, of intolerance. That's the problem. So the schools will crack down viciously on anybody who deviates from the standard progressive line. If you use the wrong pronouns for somebody, you will get kicked out of these schools, or at least you'll be disciplined. But if you harass Jewish students, if you harass Israelis, if you commit hate crimes that are targeting people based on their ethnicity, then you get a nod and a wink from the administration. And then all of a sudden it's coming back to haunt them, because now they're taking over administrative buildings. So the administrations at these schools have let this appear and increase over the course of a decade, and now it's out of control.
I understand this double standard that you're describing here. How can these types of protests that are often marred by threats and violence against Jewish students be prevented in the future?
Yeah, well, I think you have an equal standard for everybody. You should not be able to prevent somebody from entering a public area, whether it's because they're Jewish or for any other reason. That's the problem. This is similar to what happens in cities like New York, where people don't get prosecuted for crimes. It encourages more. So when these schools allow the rules to be broken by certain people, and the pro-Palestinian protesters claim that they have rights more than other people have. They want to be able to do things that nobody else is allowed to do. You can call it Palestinian privilege on campuses, that they break the rules, they commit crimes, they engage in destruction, they harass people, and the second an administration cracks down, they portray themselves as victims. So I think that we have to get rid of the Palestinian privilege for aggressive, violent protests on campuses and treat them the way you would treat any other student engaged in such conduct.
And William, just in a few seconds here, we've heard lawmakers threaten to cut funding to schools that do not provide a safe environment for their Jewish students there. Will these schools like Columbia be able to restore their public image?
Well, I don't think so. I mean, I think it's going to be some time. There will, of course, always be at these elite schools more applicants than there are spots, because the credentials still has value. But the brand is deeply hurt. The brand of Harvard is deeply hurt. I graduated from Harvard Law School. I was very proud when I did that. I'm not so proud anymore. It's almost an embarrassment when you say you graduated from Harvard. It doesn't carry the weight that it used to carry. And I'm sure the same will be for Columbia and other Ivy League schools.
Understood. William Jacobson, Cornell Law School professor, thank you for your time.
Thank you.
And stay with us. A missile attack in Odesa killed at least 4 people and injured nearly 30 today. This after a UN panel said a North Korean missile was used in a January strike against Ukraine. The latest in the Russia-Ukraine war.
As illegal immigrants continue to flow across the southern border, U.S. and Mexican leaders say they will work together to stem the tide. More on the agreement.
And the Biden administration and medical institutions face lawsuits over transgender policies. That and more after this short break.
More than just beautiful dance. It's a touch of the divine. More than just legends. It's the beautiful culture and wisdom of China before communism. More than just a performance. It's an experience that awakens the soul.
Lincoln Center, NJ-PAC, State Theater, Purchase, and Stamford. Starting March 28th. Tickets at shenyun.com.
The glory of piano masterpieces from the Baroque, Classical, and Romantic periods. New Tang Dynasty Television invites you to join the 2024 NTD International Piano Competition. Together, we preserve and revitalize the art of authentic classical piano music. October 14th to the 19th at the Kaufman Music Center in New York City. Apply now at piano.ntdtv.com.
Do you believe in Jesus?
The one-time drug dealer turned pastor, along with 2 others, will be executed at 12 midnight local time.
I thought this would be our final run ever. We had made millions and millions of dollars, but God had other plans.
We'll walk straight out of here, pretend to be the media.
This pathetic maggot got caught trying to escape my prison.
He's a changed person. He's a new man.
I found Christ in here.
I found Christ too.
My name is Peter Lowe, and I will be executed in 2 hours. Why am I being executed, you ask?
Salvation is a gift.
Hi, I'm Tim Che, the director and writer of The Firing Squad. You can participate in our Million Souls campaign, inviting everyone you know to Jesus. Listen, we all face some kind of firing squad in our lives, and yet faith in the Lord, that challenge can lead us to true peace in this insane world. We can't do it without you. We're competing with big Hollywood movies, so we're relying on your voice to spread the word. Thank you again for supporting this important movie.
There's always a searching process for beauty. You know it when you see it.
Thanks for staying with us. Ukrainian officials say a Russian missile attack on Odesa today killed at least 4 people and injured close to 30.
This after a UN panel reported yesterday that North Korean missile debris was recovered in Ukraine earlier this year. NTD's Jeremy Sandberg has the latest in the Ukraine-Russia war.
Ukraine's Navy says a Russian Iskander-M ballistic missile with a cluster warhead was used in Monday's strike. Authorities say civilian infrastructure and several residential buildings were damaged in Odesa, including part of a university. A Ukrainian state video shows the roof of the law academy on fire surrounded by smoke. Officials say 2 children and a pregnant woman are among the wounded. NATO's chief in a surprise visit to Ukraine Monday pressed allies for not delivering aid they'd promised in time.
And this has had serious consequences on the battlefield.
The lack of ammunition has enabled the Russians to push forward along the front line.
Russian front lines have moved forward in recent weeks, especially in the Donetsk region.
But it's not too late for Ukraine to prevail. More support is on the way.
Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky stated U.S. weapons were starting to arrive, but said the process needs to be faster. He stressed Ukraine's need for Patriot air defense systems to counter long-range threats. United Nations sanctions monitors on Monday said missile debris found at the start of the year in Kharkiv was from a North Korean ballistic missile. North Korea has been under UN sanctions for its missile and nuclear program since 2006. 3 sanctions monitors traveled to Ukraine earlier this month for inspection and said they found no evidence the missile was made by Russia. The monitor's report to the UN Security Council Committee concluded the missile debris was from a Hwasong 11 series, in violation of an arms embargo. The U.S. accused Russia of launching at least 9 North Korean-supplied missiles at a UN Security Council meeting in February. Russia vetoed the annual renewal of the UN sanctions monitors last month. The mandate for the current sanctions panel expires Tuesday. Secretary of State Antony Blinken warned Chinese regime counterparts of possible U.S. sanctions last week if Beijing doesn't stop exports to Russia, helping fuel Moscow's war machine. Jeremy Sandberg, NTD News.
U.S. and Mexico leaders said yesterday they plan to clamp down on illegal immigration at their shared border. In a phone conversation on Sunday, President Biden and Mexican President López Obrador said their administrations also vowed to address the economic and security problems that cause people to migrate.
Republicans have criticized Biden for rolling back stricter Trump-era border policies and failing to stem higher levels of illegal crossings.
U.S. Border Patrol picked up the legal immigrants seen here on Monday. They were then transported to San Diego for processing.
On Saturday, illegal immigrants from countries like India, China, and Colombia received food from volunteers. They set up tents and fires while waiting to be picked up by Border Patrol.
And a judge sentenced a former National Security Agency employee to 22 years in prison yesterday. That was for selling classified information. Jared Dalkey pleaded guilty to attempted espionage last year after a sting operation involving the FBI.
The judge called the sentence an act of mercy, saying Dalkey was entitled to much longer. He said he believed Dalkey deliberately took the NSA job so he could sell national security secrets. Dalkey was arrested after trying to sell information in 2022. That was to someone he believed at the time to be a Russian agent. In reality, he was in contact with someone from the FBI.
Dalkey's attorneys asked for a 14-year sentence on account of the information not falling into enemy hands. They argued Dalkey, an Army veteran, suffered a traumatic brain injury and had attempted suicide multiple times. They said his traumatic childhood increased his risk of engaging in risky behavior as an adult.
But the judge cited a lack of medical records from the defense when handing down the sentence. The FBI said they could not give details about the information Dalkey attempted to sell, but said he was aware it could fall into enemy hands.
2 states are now suing the Biden administration over changes to Title IX. The landmark civil rights law was enacted in 1972 to protect against discrimination based on sex.
The new rule expands Title IX to include discrimination based on sex stereotypes, sex characteristics, sexual orientation, and gender identity, and takes away language that's been used to protect women's sports. Louisiana is one of the states taking legal action. Here's Attorney General Liz Murrill making the announcement yesterday.
It will lead to litigation. There is a guarantee that it will lead to litigation because you're damned if you do and you're damned if you don't. If you don't protect biological women, then you violate Title IX. If you do protect biological women, you violate Title IX.
The rule also reverses Trump administration guidance on how to define and investigate sexual harassment. It takes effect this August.
Texas Attorney General Ken Paxton also announced his lawsuit yesterday, and Florida Governor Ron DeSantis has said his state won't comply. More legal challenges are expected. The Supreme Court denied Elon Musk's bid to throw out part of his 2018 settlement with the SEC yesterday. The agreement with the Securities and Exchange Commission came after Musk made a series of tweets about Tesla that regulators said were fraudulent. Justices turned away Musk's appeal of a lower court's decision upholding the deal. Musk's 2018 tweet claimed he had funding secured to take Tesla private. The SEC called the statement false and misleading and said it led to swings in Tesla's stock price. Musk agreed to have a company lawyer approve his social media posts about Tesla as part of the settlement. He says the so-called Twitter sitter provision is a violation of his First Amendment rights. And still to come, the largest U.S. wireless carriers are facing hefty fines. Find out what's behind the FCC's allegations and how wireless companies are reacting.
I'm Jonathan Lawson. If you're 50 to 85, I have an important message about security. Write down the number on your screen so you can call when I finish. The lock I want to talk to you about isn't the one on your door. This is a lock for your life insurance, a rate lock that guarantees that once you're insured, your rate can never go up at any time for any reason. But be careful. Many policies you see do not have one. But you can get a lifetime rate lock from Colonial Penn. Call this number to learn more. This plan was designed with a rate lock for people on a fixed income who want life insurance that fits their budget and is simple to get. Coverage options start at $9.95 a month, less than 35 cents a day. Act now, and your rate will be locked in for life. It will never increase, guaranteed. This is lifelong coverage that can never be canceled as long as you pay your premiums, guaranteed. And your acceptance is guaranteed, with no health questions. You cannot be turned down because of your health. Call for your information kit and read about this rate lock for yourself. You'll also get a free beneficiary planner. Both are free with no obligation. Don't miss out. Call for information, then decide. Read about the 30-day 100% money-back guarantee. Don't wait. Call this number now.
Call now and you'll also get this free beneficiary planner. Use this valuable guide to record important information and your final wishes, and it's yours free just for calling. So don't wait. Call 1-800-357-4821 for your free information. That's 1-800-357-4821. There's no risk or obligation. That number again is 1-800-357-4821. That's 1-800-357-4821. 1-800-357-4821. Call now.
Looking for a healthy and smooth-tasting brew? Drop by Days Coffee Roasters today and explore our wide selection of specialty-grade, small-batch roasted coffee. Home to North America's first enzyme-fermented coffee, we source a wide selection of specialty-grade coffee beans from around the world, and our baristas are ready to craft your customized brew. Visit Days Coffee at 28 North Street, Middletown, New York. Come experience a brew like no other.
Adopting you was the best decision in our life. And I am so proud to call you my son.
Thanks for staying with us. And we have NTD's Business Matters host Don Ma with us now to give us the latest updates from the financial world.
Don, what's going on with those cell service providers?
Well, they're getting fined, and they're getting fined heavily. So what's happening here is that the U.S. government issued millions of dollars fines in fines to AT&T, Sprint, T-Mobile, and Verizon. And this comes after an investigation that found the nation's top wireless carriers. They illegally shared customers' location in terms of their personal data without their consent. So the fine stemmed from an allegation actually back in 2020 by the Federal Communications Commission. For that years, the companies improperly shared users' geolocation histories to third parties, including prisons, as a matter of fact, as part of their commercial programs. So the fines target a practice in which carriers shared user location information with data resellers, and this is known in the industry as location aggregators. So these aggregators passed the data onward to their own third-party customers. So the FCC said AT&T must pay $57 million for the fine. Verizon, 47, Sprint, $12 million, T-Mobile, $80 million. So if you remember, Sprint and T-Mobile merged in 2020 after the investigation began, and AT&T responded to the fine saying that the FCC order lacks both legal and factual merit, and all wireless carriers said they're going to appeal the decision.
Right, and they were also saying they were held responsible for another company's violation, so keep us updated on that. Let's move on to the airline industry. Southwest Airlines has quietly launched a program that compensates travelers. What's the situation there?
Yeah, so this is what's happening here. The airline has launched this program for flight delays as part of a $140 million Department of Transportation settlement. So this settlement actually comes after the airline's major disruptions during the busy holiday travel season in December 2022. We all remember that. So passengers who experienced delays of at least 3 hours due to airline-caused issues or cancellation can receive travel vouchers worth $75 or more. Since the launch of the program on April 16th, Southwest has already received numerous requests for vouchers from affected customers, and the airline agreed to this compensation program following a holiday meltdown. If we remember, resulted in thousands of flight cancellations, right, and left millions of passengers stranded. So on top of that, Southwest Airlines also will pay a $35 million cash fine as part of this settlement.
Well, maybe we're seeing Buttigieg's crackdown on airline practices having an effect here. So we are also, let's stay on, flight travel. It seems that Congress is also taking action to boost air traffic control staffing.
Yes. So yesterday, House and the Senate negotiators said that they reached a deal for boosting air travel, traffic control staffing, and funding to avert runway close call incidents. But it won't increase the airline pilot retirement age. So the urgent need to enhance aviation safety in the U.S. has been prompted by a series of near-miss incidents and a recent mid-air emergency involving Alaska Airlines. So Congress has temporarily extended authorization for the FAA through May 10th as it works on a new $105 billion 5-year deal. So this bill requires airplanes to be equipped with 25-hour cockpit recording devices and directs the FAA to deploy advanced airport surface technology to help prevent collisions. And the Senate, it is going to vote this week on the more than 1,000-page bipartisan proposal.
Well, and Don, according to the government executive, overtime is at a record level in the FAA right now, and that's leading to fatigue. So you can see why these lawmakers are taking action. Next, there's a new rule by the NHTSA that's in regards to emergency braking. What's up with that?
Yeah, so a lot of new rules, seems like recently, and for this one, it seems like for the not too distant future, automatic emergency braking will come to have to be on standard on all passenger vehicles in the United States, and this is due to a requirement by the government, and the aim here is to prevent collision-related deaths, of course, and thousands of injuries every year related to these incidents. So the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration unveiled the final version of the new regulation yesterday, and called it the most significant safety rule in the past 2 decades. So this is designed to prevent many rear end and pedestrian collisions, and to, of course, reduce the roughly 40,000 traffic deaths that happen each year. So the new rule requires all passenger vehicles weighing 10,000 pounds or less to have forward collision warning, automatic emergency braking, and pedestrian detection braking. So the regulation won't go into effect for more than 5 years. But when it does go into effect, we could potentially see cars, automatically stopping when it detects something in front of it.
Right. And the government, we're seeing now the government starting to really weigh in with those regulations. for automated driving systems. And because up until now, this tech has very little performance standards, I guess. So big deal here. So thank you so much, Don Ma, host of Business Matters. Appreciate it.
Thanks.
And stay with us. An unusual sight for residents as escaped zebras make their way through a Washington state neighborhood.
France is buzzing with activity as the Summer Olympic Games draw near, especially at the Versailles Palace Gardens. More about an elite team of equestrians carrying on a tradition.
I'm Richard Karn, and I love my hose. It ain't those old hoses. This is my hose. The new Pocket Hose Copper Bullet, now infused with real copper, so your water is always clean and lead-free. Just turn on the water and watch your hose grow and grow. And when you turn off the water, away it goes. Our new inner tube uses 3 layers of high-strength latex on the inside. Then it's wrapped in a new polymer filament jacket, 3 times stronger than the other hoses. But my favorite part of our new hose build? The oversized, easy-to-grip fittings. Get the super light 25-foot Pocket Hose Copper Bullet today for only $29.99. But wait, call now and get our copper spray nozzle with our exclusive thumb drive free. This is an exclusive release of our newest Pocket Hose. Order now.
Call 1-800-960-8919. That's 1-800-960-8919 or visit copperbullet.hose.com. Order now.
The tempting online world is encroaching on our campus. Is unplugging cables and confiscating phones the solution to protect our children? No, we just need a clean multimedia platform. Join Ganjing Campus to leverage premium channel features, professional development courses, and kindness event toolkits tailored for teachers. Build a truly positive and interactive classroom community. Foster a pure and delightful learning environment for children.
I was born into the wrong body, Mom. I was astounded by what they were teaching. Child Protective Services did show up at my house. Parents are fearful of losing custody of their children because they say the wrong thing. Risks?
No risks. We got everything covered, I assure you, Mrs. Connors.
They don't want anyone to know the truth.
I can't stay quiet about this anymore. It's destroyed my health.
We're pushed into silence.
Is deep-sea fish oil really healthy? Due to pollution in the oceans, most fish contain heavy metal elements and radioactive substances. That's why it's so important to choose a pure source of omega-3. Puritang green vegetable omega-3 is made from purslane and perilla seeds, which are rich in nutrients and minerals, especially vitamins A, D, E, calcium, and iron. With natural processing and no harmful chemical additives, it has more than 90% concentration of omegas 3, 6, 7, and 9. It effectively improves brain power and is beneficial to the heart's health. Puritang omega-3 does not smell of fish and contains no pollutants, so both adults and children can safely and easily consume it over a long period of time. Puritang green vegetable omega-3, greener, healthier, and more effective. Visit puritang.com to learn more.
Welcome back. The historic Versailles Palace Gardens will soon host the Paris Olympics equestrian sports.
It will also host modern pentathlon events during the games this July and August. And now the palace is starting to buzz with excitement. Let's take a look.
The Versailles Palace Gardens were commissioned by France's King Louis XIV. The stables once housed more than 2,000 horses during the 18th century. They were an essential part of the festivities and a symbol of the king's power. The Olympics this summer will harken back to those times.
Versailles is hosting the Olympic Games this year. So there's going to be dressage, eventing, and everything that's linked with horses and horse riding. So it's very exciting because we're going to have a lot of good horses and good riders coming here. So there's going to be a bit of movement everywhere, and it's very interesting, I think.
Fanny Leray is one of the 12 select riders of the National Equestrian Academy. They handle the palace's famed royal stables and care for their beloved horses. Almost every day at dawn, they enjoy the quietness and splendor of grass, lawns, and woods of the Versailles Palace Park before thousands of visitors from around the world come in.
I really enjoy working here and living here. It's very prestigious place, it is. And there's centuries of history, especially in horse riding here, because it was where what we call the traditional French dressage was born. It was here on this area.
The 12 Academy riders perform in a prestigious show at the great stables every weekend to the delight of spectators. The Academy is open to both genders, but women form the majority of applicants. Members are known for their modern take on equestrian art. They learn fencing, dancing, and Japanese archery to help hone skills used in their weekly shows. Although the Academy members aren't participating in the games, they're looking forward to seeing Olympic riders galloping in the gardens in the Palace of Versailles.
There is a lot historical meaning to do those Olympics in the garden because the king before organized a lot of play and show and everything in those gardens. So yeah, it's really great to have that here.
Up to 40,000 people are expected to attend the cross-country part of the equestrian event. For those who can't make the Paris Olympics, the National Equestrian Academy will continue to present its weekend show at Versailles this summer until August 7th.
See those pigtails on that horse?
Oh,
coming down.
Yeah, you know, they're such pretty beings, and that's awesome. I think that's such a big part of history. The stables were commissioned by the Sun King himself.
Yeah, it's very interesting. Yeah, and under the monarchy in France, the horses were used by the royal family, and it was a symbol of the king's power, those horses.
Oh, there you go. So a lot of historical significance there. But meanwhile, here in the U.S., residents of a town in Washington state were treated to an unusual sight on Sunday when 4 escaped zebras galloped into their neighborhood.
3 of the 4 black and white striped animals were quickly captured. The fate of the 4th at this time is unclear.
The zebras were being transported from Washington to Montana. The driver took an exit off I-90 at North Bend, a town 30 miles southeast of Seattle.
It's like an open-air zoo over there.
Yes, the zebras bolted when the driver was securing the trailer.
A witness said he and other drivers helped protect the zebras from the busy nearby interstate. They pulled over on the exit ramp to create a makeshift fence and block the animals from the highway.
The zebras then headed towards town, trotting past patrons at a restaurant near the interstate exit.
The zebras ran to a neighboring yard where 2 were captured with the help of rodeo professionals. The 3rd was corralled later.
Man, they're lucky though. That could have ended worse than that. I'm happy they're fine.
Yeah, got to keep them safe. You know, zebras and cars don't mix.
No, have you seen the video of the city of London where 2 horses just started bolting and one crashed into a bus, I think. So it was white and it had blood all over itself.
Oh boy. Well, it's just another reason why it's good to sharpen those rodeo skills.
Yeah, there you go. All right, we're heading to a quick break now, but we'll be right back in just a minute, so stay with us.
There are real consequences to controlled media. And NTD's founders know them firsthand. Our freedom of thought is the price. This is the lesson that guides us in everything we do.
Yeah, so there's the tear gas there.
We know the value of a free society. And we take seriously the responsibility to preserve it. We are NTD.
Welcome to NTD.
Good morning. Here are today's top stories. Protesters took over and occupied Columbia's Hamilton Hall early this morning. Pro-Palestine protests are spreading across U.S. campuses. How are universities responding?
The anti-Israel protests sparking reactions from both the Biden White House and former President Trump. What each is saying as the U.S. pushes for a new hostage deal in Gaza.
An attempt to serve a warrant to a convicted felon in North Carolina turns into a tragic day for law enforcement, with 4 fallen officers. More on the incident and a second shooter.
A judge in former President Trump's so-called hush money case is set to rule on alleged gag order violations this week. A ruling could come as soon as today, as the 3rd week of trial gets underway.
President Biden plans for capital gains set to potentially be the highest in over a century. What this means for your money and the economy.
The 8th World Chinese Traditional Martial Arts Competition is coming soon. We hear one contestant tell his story of finding martial arts and changing his life.
This is NTD Good Morning. Live from our global headquarters, here are Evelyn Lee and Kevin Hogan.
Welcome to NTD.
Good morning. Today is Tuesday, April 30th.
Yeah, and that capital gains tax proposal, that's a big one. Biggest in the century.
Right, so we will definitely stay tuned for that one. But first, the biggest update in the morning, the ongoing protests at Columbia University. Anti-Israel protesters took over and barricaded a school building early this morning.
That happened hours after the university began suspending students to clear tent encampments as this year's commencement ceremonies approach. NTD's Jeremy Sandberg has the story.
Protesters at Columbia University broke into and barricaded historic Hamilton Hall on campus in the early hours Tuesday morning. A report from the Columbia Daily Spectator says protesters unfurled a banner reading Hind's Hall in reference to 5-year-old Hind Ruzab, who was killed in Gaza in January. This signals a major escalation in the protests at Columbia, a day after negotiations between demonstrators and university administration broke down. On Monday, the university began suspending students who set up camp on campus. University President Manoush Shafiq stated talks failed to persuade demonstrators to pack up their tents. University spokesperson Ben Chang said the encampment created an unwelcoming environment for Jewish students and faculty. He said the university is giving students the chance to abandon the protest site.
Students who do not will be placed on suspension, ineligible to complete the semester or graduate, and will be restricted from all academic, residential, and recreational spaces.
An anonymous student filed a lawsuit against Columbia on Monday for allegedly failing to guarantee the safety of Jewish students. A lawyer for the student said the lawsuit is a result of what he called complacency and appeasement by academic institutions calling for genocide.
The people united!
Nationwide, the protests show no signs of slowing down. Police arrested dozens of protesters at the University of Texas in Austin on Monday. The charges range from trespassing to disorderly conduct. The university issued a statement saying the encampment set up on campus broke school rules. It said many protesters arrested were not affiliated with the university. This after opposing sets of protesters clashed at UCLA over the weekend. Tensions between pro-Israel and pro-Gaza protesters had been growing before a group broke through a barrier set up to separate the two camps. It's unclear which group first breached the barricade. A pro-Israel demonstrator described his experience.
We were bum rushed by a huge crowd of protesters that came in and circled this whole area.
The pro-Israel camp staged a screening of graphic footage from Hamas's October 7th terrorist attack on Israel. These included clips of people, including babies, getting shot in their homes, and interviews with survivors. One student described to NTD how the protests have disrupted life on campus.
Even today, the steps are blocked off. You can't go up giant steps to get to your classes. You have to go around. There's so many helicopters, sitting in class, it's so hard to pay attention.
Officials at Virginia Tech say 91 protesters arrested on Sunday night had been charged with trespassing. Video posted on social media showed demonstrators chanting "Shame on you" as some were taken into custody. House Speaker Mike Johnson said Monday lawmakers will hold college administrators accountable for not keeping their students safe.
This is not an expression of free speech. This is
This is the threats and open intimidation of the lives of innocent Jewish students.
Johnson said House Republicans will focus on this message over the rest of the week. Jeremy Sandberg, NTD News.
To discuss the anti-Israel protests happening at Columbia University and others around the country, I spoke with William Jacobson, a Cornell Law School professor and the founder of equalprotect.org. Columbia is starting to suspend these demonstrators. What's the appropriate response here?
Well, I think that if you're breaking into buildings and you're barricading them and you've been given alternative means of protesting and you choose not to take those, then I think you should bear the consequences of what you've done. These are adults. These are not 3-year-olds. They may be acting like 3-year-olds, but they're adults, and they should bear the legal and the scholastic repercussions of what they are knowingly doing.
Yes, and William, this is definitely widespread as the number of arrests across the country surrounding these protests is nearing 1,000 here. This decision to suspend students, is that enough, or is expulsion an option?
Well, I think that it depends on what they did. If they committed acts of violence, like some of these people are, if they committed ethnic hate crimes, which some of them clearly have, including at UCLA, then they should be expelled. No second chances. If, on the other hand, they're just protesting and maybe making a little bit too much noise, then no, that's probably too much. But the point is, the rules have to be enforced equally and evenly against everybody, and they're clearly not.
We've heard lawmakers threaten to cut funding to schools that do not provide a safe environment for their Jewish students there. Will these schools like Columbia be able to restore their public image?
Well, I don't think so. I mean, I think it's going to be some time. There will, of course, always be at these elite schools more applicants than there are spots because the credential still has value. But the brand is deeply hurt. The brand of Harvard is deeply hurt. I graduated from Harvard Law School. I was very proud when I did that. I'm not so proud anymore. It's almost an embarrassment when you say you graduated from Harvard. It doesn't carry the weight that it used to carry. And I'm sure the same will be for Columbia and other Ivy League schools.
Understood. William Jacobson, Cornell Law School professor, thank you for your time.
Thank you.
4 law enforcement officers are dead and another 4 were shot and wounded in Charlotte, North Carolina yesterday.
NTD's Daniel Monahan has more on the shooting, which happened while officers tried to serve a warrant to a convicted felon.
The flashing lights of police and emergency vehicles on a sunny residential street. An eerie calm after the terrible events that occurred there. Police Chief Johnny Jennings called it a tragic day for Charlotte and for law enforcement.
Today we lost some heroes that are out to just simply trying to keep our community safe.
Jennings described what unfolded when a U.S. Marshals Fugitive Task Force went to serve a warrant to a convicted felon for possession of a firearm.
When they approached that individual, they were met with gunfire. Officers returned gunfire and struck the victim, who was later pronounced deceased in the front yard of the residence.
Some of the officers who rushed to the Charlotte neighborhood to rescue the first wave of downed officers were wounded as a second shooter began firing on them. After a 3-hour standoff, the suburban Charlotte home was torn open. Armored vehicles smashed into it, ripping off windows and entire doorways that were left broken. Police took a woman and a 17-year-old male found in the home into custody. Chief Jennings said it is believed at least one of them had fired on the officers. One of the downed officers was Joshua Iyer, who leaves behind a wife and his 3-year-old son, Andrew.
We'll always be indebted to Officer Iyer for his bravery and his sacrifice for this profession.
Chief Jennings says just last month he was congratulating Iyer for being named Officer of the Month. Daniel Monahan, NTD News.
Former President Trump's criminal trial in New York City is back on today. A judge is likely to rule on alleged gag order violations this week. Prosecutors are expected to pick up questioning of Michael Cohen's former banker this morning. Judge Juan Merchan is set a hearing Thursday on prosecutors' gag order claims, but could address them today. The court takes a full recess every Wednesday. Trump will campaign in Wisconsin and Michigan tomorrow. Prosecutors want Judge Merchan to fine Trump $1,000 for each of the 14 alleged violations they flagged. That was for Trump's comments in public and on social media. The Manhattan DA's office wants the judge to warn Trump he could end up in jail if he doesn't stop.
For the second time, the U.S. Supreme Court yesterday said no to Peter Navarro. He's trying to get out of prison while his case is being appealed.
The former Trump advisor is doing time for failing to comply with the subpoena from the House January 6 committee.
Just before he was to report to prison last month, Navarro filed an emergency request asking the Supreme Court to allow him to remain free while his case winds through the D.C. Circuit Court.
Chief Justice John Roberts denied that request. The next day, Navarro began serving his sentence in a federal prison in Florida.
In the second attempt, which ended with yesterday's ruling, Navarro's resubmitted the request to Justice Neil Gorsuch, Trump's first high court nominee. Supreme Court rules allow parties whose emergency applications are denied by a single justice to resubmit to another justice.
Gorsuch referred the request to the full court, which denied it without comment. Navarro has about 3 months left in his sentence.
And Florida's 6-week abortion ban is set to take effect tomorrow. The new law overrides the state's current 15-week ban. This will likely affect thousands of women in and out of the state seeking abortions. More than 1,300 people have traveled to Florida for an abortion so far this year. There's a possibility the situation could change this coming November. An amendment to allow abortion up to the point of viability is on the 2024 election ballot. And viability is when a baby can survive after birth. It's generally considered to be around 6 months into pregnancy. Coming up, President Biden's plan would see the capital gains tax soar to over 44%. That would be the highest level in over a century.
An economist will break down what that would mean for the economy and the average American. And the 8th World Chinese Traditional Martial Arts Competition is coming soon. We hear one contestant's story of how overcoming hardships changed his life.
More than just beautiful dance. It's a touch of the divine. More than just legends. It's the beautiful culture and wisdom of China before communism. More than just a performance. It's an experience that awakens the soul.
Lincoln Center, NJ Pack, State Theater, Purchase, and Stamford. Starting March 28th. Tickets at shenyun.com.
The shining gem of New England. This delightful seaside city of Newport is one of the most beautiful places in the state. Today, we bring you here as we meet with our friends and fellow musicians from the Hermitage Piano Trio. As a team, they have garnered multiple Grammy Award nominations with their breathtaking performances.
Oh, wow, I did not think this instrument can make that sound, right?
The pandemic made this reunion even more special.
3 of us, we like it because we feel music the same way, so...
Don't miss us on the next episode of Piano Talks.
Do you believe in Jesus?
The one-time drug dealer turned pastor, along with 2 others, will be executed at 12 midnight local time.
I thought this would be our final run ever. We had made millions and millions of dollars, but God had other plans.
We'll walk straight out of here, pretend to be the media.
This pathetic maggot got caught
try to escape my prison.
He's a changed person. He's a new man.
Ah!
I found Christ in here.
I found Christ too.
My name is Peter Lowe, and I will be executed in 2 hours. Why am I being executed, you ask? Salvation is a gift.
Hi, I'm Tim Che, the director and writer of The Firing Squad. You can participate in our Million Souls campaign, inviting everyone you know to Jesus. Listen, we all face some kind of firing squad in our lives, and yet faith in the Lord, that challenge can lead us to true peace in this insane world. We can't do it without you. We're competing with big Hollywood movies, so we're relying on your voice to spread the word. Thank you again for supporting this important movie.
Great to have you back with us. A type of tax raised to its highest level in over a century. That's President Biden's proposal for capital gains tax.
A report by the Treasury Department reveals Biden's plan for fiscal 2025. It sees capital gains taxes shooting up to 44.6%.
And joining me now to discuss the effects this will have is Thomas Savage, an economist at the American Institute for Economic Research. Great to have you here with us, Thomas. Please explain what capital gains tax is generally, and then specifically what Biden's plan is.
Hey, thanks so much for having me. So generally, capital gains taxes are taxes on shareholders and shareholders of corporations for any sort of gains they have on their investment. Now, President Biden wants to raise these taxes to some of the highest levels, as you mentioned, in over 100 years, and that would actually give us some of the highest corporate income tax rates in the developed world.
So what would Biden's latest proposal do to the economy?
It would be a disaster. Corporate income taxes are research is showing that corporate income taxes are some of the most devastating for prosperity and for economic growth. And that's because these taxes don't just get paid by corporations. Those costs get passed on to workers in the form of, sluggish wage growth, because money that could have gone to employee compensation is now going to these taxes, tax compliance. And then on top of that, that also gets passed on to consumers as well, because funds that could have been used to grow the business, expand opportunities to consumers, are now, of course, going to taxes.
And to your point here, Thomas, an economist at the Heritage Foundation, E.J. Antony, he said that investment is the real driver of economic growth. And if you're going to tax something, you get less of it. So that would mean less growth here. The majority of the tax hikes will affect Americans making over $1 million per year, but will lower earners feel the effects of this?
Absolutely. And, that quote is right on the money there. Investment is the wind in the sails of economic growth. It's prosperity. It's rising living standards for all. And as I mentioned, those costs, even though they're not directly seen, you have to look at, what could have been. What could that business have done? How could it have grown that business, either by expanding employment opportunities or expanding the number of goods and services it provides for people? And, at affordable rates, it could have found ways to finance something cheaper, something more widely available, even for lower income Americans. So everybody suffers from corporate income taxes.
So you've established that this is a dampening effect on the economy. Why would President Biden propose this?
Well, the federal government has a spending problem, not a revenue problem. And right now, the federal government is desperate to try and fund massive spending programs, massive government and expansions. But if the federal government really wants to get its budget and its fiscal house in order, it should look at tapering its own spending and not looking to take money out of the pockets of hardworking Americans.
Thomas, are capital gains taxes too high right now?
Yes, absolutely. And, folks on either side of the aisle, can agree that, even though they might disagree on what the rate should be, they can agree that corporate income taxes are extremely volatile. And so that means that in the first year after a tax change, maybe the government gets a windfall of revenue, but in years 2, years 3, people reassess their behavior, they reassess their strategies. Maybe they move their businesses overseas. Maybe they unfortunately just shut their business down altogether because the cost of complying is too high. And so then you get a downfall of revenue. And when you have government programs that require 5-10 years of consistent funding, you're going to end up with budget deficits. So really what the government should be doing is cutting spending and stop relying on corporate income taxes altogether, and instead focus on consumption taxes if it wants to fund the core services of government.
Is there such a thing as a capital gains tax or a corporate tax rate that is too low?
I would say no, because again, that tax on corporate income, the tax on even on personal income, any tax, whether it's business income or personal income, is going to be distorting and devastating to prosperity, to economic growth. And of course, we have our super complicated tax code. Compliance, you have an entire industry dedicated just to tax code compliance. So even a flat rate would be better than, tons of deductions and loopholes. But at the end of the day, the best flat rate is a 0% rate.
Well, thank you so much for giving us analysis. Thomas Savage, economist at the American Institute for Economic Research.
Thanks so much for having me.
The U.S. government has issued millions of dollars in fines to AT&T, Sprint, T-Mobile, and Verizon.
This comes after an investigation found the nation's top wireless carriers illegally shared customers' personal data without their consent.
The fines stem from allegations in 2020 by the Federal Communications Commission that for years, the companies improperly shared users' geolocation histories to third parties, including to prisons as part of their commercial programs.
The fines target a practice in which carriers shared user location information with data resellers known in the industry as location aggregators. These aggregators pass the data onward to their own third-party customers.
The FCC said AT&T must pay $57 million, while Verizon was fined nearly $47 million. Sprint was fined $12 million and T-Mobile $80 million. Sprint and T-Mobile merged in 2020 after the investigation began.
AT&T responded to the fine, saying the FCC order lacks both legal and factual merit. All wireless carriers said they will appeal the decision.
Healthcare technology giant Philips said yesterday it would pay $1.1 billion in settlements over its recalled sleep apnea machines.
The company agreed to make the payment to settle all personal injury claims filed in the U.S. without admitting any wrongdoing.
The Dutch conglomerate has recalled millions of its breathing devices since 2021. There were concerns that foam used in them could degrade and become toxic, carrying potential cancer risks.
Philips is still facing lawsuits in Europe over the devices, but Jacobs said the settlement would end most of the uncertainty for investors.
The company said it did not admit that any injuries were caused by its devices.
Philips announced earlier this month it had reached an agreement with the U.S. government to make improvements to plans that manufacture sleep apnea devices.
And the 8th World Chinese Traditional Martial Arts Competition is coming soon. The event, organized by NTD, will begin in June.
One contestant shares his story of overcoming childhood illness and how a Bruce Lee movie changed his life. Let's take a look.
Taiwan's Ling Chixing is a former silver medalist in the Southern Fist category. He's returning to the competition this year. He's now a top-notch martial artist, but that wasn't always the case. Ling says he was weak and sickly as a child.
When I was 6 years old, my father took me to see Bruce Lee's Rise of the Dragon, and from that moment on, I felt that I must have a connection with martial arts in my life, and my family was very supportive of me later on.
Mr. Lin's style of Southern Fist is marked by rapidly moving and changing positions. It's a unique martial arts style commonly known as soft fist. It emphasizes the relaxation of the whole body, the flexibility of steps, and the use of force to take advantage of a situation. This year, Mr. Ling is bringing his students to compete in the NTD's International Martial Arts Competition.
This is my second time participating in the competition. I hope it will broaden my students' horizons, especially with the intense international competition. It will allow them to learn more.
NTD's International Traditional Chinese Martial Arts Competition aims to promote traditional Chinese martial arts, propagate martial morality, and revive the true, divinely inspired traditional Chinese culture. Mr. Ling invites all martial artist enthusiasts to join in the fun.
I hope we can all come together in the spirit of passing on the tradition of martial arts, and I hope to see you all in New York in August.
NTD's 8th International Traditional Chinese Martial Arts Competition Asia Pacific Preliminary Competition will be held in June in Taiwan and Germany and the US. The semifinals and finals will take place in New Jersey this September. The top prize for Mr. Lin's category is $5,000. NTD News, Taiwan.
And if you're interested, tickets are $25 each, and NTD will also live stream the finals.
He's got some moves.
Yeah, and I like that we're talking about morals, because many people might not know, martial arts is a lot of spiritual cultivation. So
yes. Yeah, working in that inner self.
Yeah.
Right.
All right, we have to wrap up right here. We're running out of time, but be sure to stay tuned to NTD's News Today broadcast at 10 a.m. Eastern Time coming up.
And for round-the-clock original news coverage, visit us at ntd.com or download our NTD app.
Thanks for watching. I'm Evelyn Lee.
And I'm Kevin Hogan.
Shen Yun Creations, the streaming platform from Shen Yun, featuring world-class dance, past programs, and all original music.